cards for. 50 years ago this week, exactly, the credit card was introduced in the UK for the first time, and we've never looked back. It's now just about in every person wanting in the country, but has it been good for us? Let's talk to Hertfordshire-based economist and wealth manager, Mr. Jonathan Davis. Jonathan, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Very well, sir. Jonathan, Barclaycard was the first, of course, and it's brilliant if you can pay off your bill every month, but not everyone uses it in that way.
No, indeed. For many years, it worked really well because interest rates were so high. People, in effect, were forced to pay off their outstanding balances. But then, of course, in recent years, interest rates kept falling and falling and falling, and credit card companies were less inclined to ensure that people paid off their debts. So they just allowed it to roll on, and of course, many of the credit card companies, the banks, earned interest on interest, as it were. So of course, they were perfectly happy. Then, of course, with the banking collapse, since then, interest rates generally have absolutely collapsed to practically nothing, but not credit card interest. Credit card interest, unless you're in a particularly special deal, credit card interest is still really quite high. It's not a cheap way of borrowing money anymore. I have to say to you, I and my wife, we don't use credit cards. We only use debit cards.
But that's great if you've got, the trouble is if you've got money, that's fine. You can manage your money, you know how to manage your money. But for those people who don't earn enough money, who fall upon hard times, Jonathan, the temptation has been, certainly in the last few years, well, I haven't got the money, but I still need, I won't use the analogy of a flat screen TV, I still need to get the car fixed, I'll put it on the plastic.
Well, indeed, and we have a very high cost of living. And earnings for average earners in the last 10 or 15 years have hardly moved. And yet the cost of accommodation, the cost of heating and lighting have risen, maybe not recently, but over the last 10 to 15 years. We've had inflation. So earnings haven't risen, we've had inflation, as the accommodation costs have gone up. So of course, it's difficult to get by, and that unfortunately has led to the massive growth in the payday loans. We're talking about credit card interest, which maybe are, say, 15-25% interest. Everyone knows payday loans are absolutely ridiculous. 1,000% per annum if you keep them going. Yes, it's incredibly problematic. Unfortunately, people need to get to grips with the economic realities, and now I'm going to go to the big picture, that as far as I can tell, last year, 2015, was the peak in the economic cycle, which started in 2009, and if indeed I'm correct, and that we're heading towards slowdown, indeed recession, there's going to be job losses, so if people haven't got their houses in order, they're going to have great problems.
Now, are we heading for recession because that is the general cycle that we face, or is it because we're now coming out of the EU and Brexit, what might cost us a bit of money?
Brexit, EU's got absolutely nothing to do with it. 2 points. One, in 2014, the UK grew 3%, last year grew 2%. The official organisations are saying this year about 1.5%. I've been saying since the end of last year that it will be sub 1% this year. That is clear economic slowdown. The second point is China is massively in slowdown. America is probably going into recession as we speak. These are, of course, the two largest economies on the planet. It has nothing to do with us moving from one relationship with the EU to another relationship. It is because the global economy is slowing down, and the UK is part of that and feeling the effects of it.
Jonathan, one final point. Later this year, we could have Prime Minister Boris Johnson and President Trump. Surely that will make the world a safer place financially.
I think I would say the politicians are far less important these days to the economy than you might imagine. The central banks, the Federal Reserve of the US, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, etc., they have pumped masses, thousands of billions of pounds, euros, dollars, whatever, into the economy. A stimulus, in effect, what it means is we've been borrowing in, economic growth from the future, and that's what's kept us afloat the last few years. But you know, with tens of thousands of billions of dollars of stimulus, and yet we're going into economic slowdown and recession, the problem is we will have all that debt when we go into recession. 2017 is pretty well when you should be looking at this, maybe even the end of this year. And I'm afraid to say it will not be like 2008, because in 2009 they slashed interest rates in the UK from 5% to 0.5. They cannot do that again because they're at 0.5. So I'm afraid the next one is going to be the main course. We saw the hors d'oeuvre in 2008.
Jonathan, thank you. Economist and wealth manager Jonathan Davis. Problem is, he hasn't been wrong so far. That's what worries me.